I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel is still reeling after a fatal terror attack in Jerusalem over the weekend. It looks like Saudi Arabia may actually be getting closer with Israel, and we'll reveal why a senior Palestinian official made a major donation to an Israeli hospital. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Israel was shaken up this weekend when two coordinated terror attacks were carried out in Jerusalem's Old City, and thousands are today mourning the death of a 23-year-old border police officer who was fatally wounded while fighting off the terrorists. Hadas Malka was stabbed by the Damascus Gate on Friday night, just moments after responding to a shooting attack at the nearby cave of Zedekiah. She fought her attacker off while trying to draw her weapon, but received critical stab wounds in her upper torso. Although she underwent emergency surgery at the Hadassah Hospital on Mount Scopus, it wasn't enough, and she succumbed to her injuries. Israeli President Reuven Rivlin says, quote, "His heart goes out to the brave warrior who seemed full of the joy of life and of a love for the meaningful service she insisted on taking part in." The Israeli public didn't initially understand the extent of Malka's injuries, and even when the Jerusalem mayor Nir Barakat described the incident to journalists, the state of her condition wasn't very clear.
About an hour ago, we had a terror attack here at the outskirts of not far from the Temple Mount, right outside of the old city of Jerusalem. It was a terror attack by three terrorists that attacked some of our soldiers and actually border police and policemen. They were neutralized very, very quickly, within a few seconds in one incident, and in another minute or 2 minutes the other incident. We have, unfortunately, one very wounded police lady and another policeman, plus three other local residents of Jerusalem were slightly hurt.
The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack, but Hamas and the PFLP have too. And considering it's doubtful if the Islamic State has a significant presence in Israel, many are taking the claim with a grain of salt. For Israel, the ultimate responsibility for this weekend's terror attack in Jerusalem belongs to the Palestinian Authority. The Israeli ambassador to the UN says that PA terror subsidies are one of the main causes of terror attacks. Dani Danon says that the payments that the Palestinian Authority make to terrorists and their families encourage even more heinous attacks, just like the one we saw this weekend. Israeli officials say that the Palestinian Authority has paid around $1.12 billion in salaries to imprisoned Palestinian terrorists and the families of dead terrorists. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is demanding that the Palestinian Authority condemn the attack, and he expects the international community to do the same. But when it comes to the Palestinian Authority, he might end up disappointed. The only condemnation coming from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's Fatah Party is for, quote, "the war crime carried out by Israeli occupation forces in Jerusalem against the three Palestinian teens responsible for the attack." The three terrorists who committed the Friday night attacks were all shot by Israeli security forces. New reports are saying that Israel and Saudi Arabia are in talks to open economic ties, which would be a dramatic turn from the last 70 years of history. Saudi Arabia has been one of the leaders of the Arab League boycott of Israel for generations. While countries like Egypt, Jordan, and Morocco have all moderated their stance toward the Jewish state, Saudi Arabia has held fast against any hint of normalization. But American and Arab sources are telling the Times of London that the Israelis and Saudis are working toward an agreement. It would give El Al, Israel's national carrier, flyover rights over Saudi airspace, which could substantially shorten travel times to India and the Far East. Along with that, Israeli businesses would be permitted to operate in the Gulf. Reportedly, the Palestinians are furious about this. They see any move towards relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia as essentially soft normalization that undermines their cause. But with the Gulf Arab states' concern over the Iranian threat, Israeli military capabilities may take more priority than Palestinian solidarity. Joining me now in the studio to discuss rumors of the emerging diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel is Dr. Kike Adele, who served for 25 years in the IDF military intelligence and is an expert in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
Now let's begin. What would it mean for Saudi Arabia to establish diplomatic ties with Israel?
Well, Saudi Arabia will be targeted by everybody, those who don't like it, like Iranians and Qataris, apparently Hamas, who recently became a good ally of Hezbollah, although they are different in the creed, the Sunni and the Shi'i. And of course, the Palestinians will blame them for naturalizing the relations with Israel before there is peace between Israel and Palestinians. But the Saudis are confident enough to do whatever they think appropriate in order to according to their interests.
Now, do you think this is in any way related to the ongoing conflict that we're seeing between Saudi Arabia and Qatar?
Definitely. Qatar is only the messenger of Iran in this case, and Saudi Arabia will now do anything, even make an alliance with the Satan, with the devil himself, if they thought that the devil can save them from the Iranian octopus. And they definitely see the octopus engulfing Saudi Arabia from the south in Yemen, from the north in Iraq, in Syria, and Lebanon. And they actually see themselves as the natural ally to Israel, who is targeted by the same octopus, the Iranian one.
Now, we're seeing these reports of the growing, or we'll see if we can say growing, but the establishment of diplomatic ties between Saudi Arabia and Israel right now. But has there been any secret relationship, something that we haven't necessarily been seeing, in the mass media?
Well, for years there are all kinds of rumors about all kinds of understandings between Israel and Saudi Arabia vis-a-vis Iran, and I won't go into details. Apparently, because of the tension inside the Arab world about Qatar and actually about the Iranian role in the Arab world, and now Saudi Arabia can come out of the closet and maybe say something more clear. Hey guys, we allow the Israeli, let's say, El Al, fly above Saudi Arabia, although they don't allow the Qatari Airways to fly above Saudi Arabia. Means they are taking sides with Israel and against Iran. However, I must say there is something here behind the scenes which people do not understand. There is a struggle, or I would say a competition, between the Palestinians on one side and Saudi Arabia about the centrality of Mecca vis-a-vis the centrality of Jerusalem for Islam. While Palestinians, both the PA and Hamas, are willing to put more weight, Islamic weight, on Jerusalem, the Saudis see it as some kind of competition with the centrality of Mecca.
Really?
And behind the scenes, there is a struggle between the Palestinian willing to put Jerusalem in the center of the interests of the Islamic world, against Israel, of course, while the Saudis see it as a challenge to the centrality of Mecca. And this also might push the Saudis to cooperate with the Israelis in order to show the Palestinians who is here the boss.
Now, is this the beginning of warmer relations between Israel and also other Arab nations, other Gulf Arab states?
Well, first of all, I have to warn everybody. Peace has not yet came to this Middle East only because Saudi Arabia and Israel has some kind of understandings. And don't forget, the Middle East is built on sand dunes. And sand dunes are moving according to the wind. Today, the wind, let's say, works in our favor. So Saudi Arabia and some maybe more countries like the Emirates and Kuwait might be more friendly with Israel. It can change. Let's say if Iran, and when Iran, not if, when Iran collapses, because it will happen one day, or Iran has some inner struggles, it will collapse one day. It could take a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I don't know. But Iran will collapse one day. And there is no any more Iranian danger on Saudi Arabia. They will not feel so cozy with us. Well, means everything is interests, and today the interest is facing Iran.
Well, there are a lot more questions that I could ask you about this topic, but unfortunately we have run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Dr. Kike Adele. Perhaps the darkest side of Tel Aviv's startup marketplace is the shady multi-billion-dollar industry known as Forex and binary options. Now, here's the question. Is the Israeli government finally going to ban the fraudulent business? ILTV correspondent Aaron Porras is here with more. Aaron, what is wrong with binary options for those of us who don't know much about this industry?
Well, aside from the dubious nature of the entire business, it also puts Israel in a really kind of nightmarish position from a public relations standpoint. The Israeli government, has to know what it makes Israel look like because they passed a law protecting Israeli citizens just last year. In addition to that, it makes sense that they would want to protect Israelis, so why not protect people who are working with the Israelis? It's really easy, quick check to look up who just robbed you, what company, where it is, and where it's from. So the good thing, though, is that they're making some advancements. Today, that bill has the bill to ban Forex companies in Israel has passed its first reading, and I'll tell you some more in my report. Today, the Israeli cabinet is set to vote on a bill sponsored by Finance Minister Moshe Kahlon to ban the industry of Forex and binary options. If it passes today's reading, it's set to be fast-tracked through the Knesset, and a lot of scammers could be out of jobs. Thousands of people over the world have lost millions of dollars to the binary options firms that cast their webs from Tel Aviv skyscrapers. European and American immigrants make untraceable phone calls and use their native accents to gain the trust of their targets. Then, once hooked, the binary workers take them for every cent they've got, in some cases even their life savings. A 61-year-old Canadian man who lost over $150,000 to an Israeli binary options firm shot himself in the chest this past January. He'd been defrauded by a broker in Israel going by the name of Julian Wellington. Israelis banned binary options firms from targeting Israelis over a year ago, but plans to ban the firms from Israel have been considerably delayed, and some say it's because of lobbyists. Last October, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called for the unscrupulous industry to be shut down. On Saturday, the chairman of the Israeli Securities Authority went further, saying that binary options are stoking anti-Semitism more than anything else in the world.
Israel, Greece, and Cyprus are hitting the gas on plans to build a natural gas pipeline that will open up European markets to the substantial natural gas reserves in the eastern Mediterranean. ILTV correspondent Max Keisler is here with more. Now, Max, what's going on?
For years, Israel's been talking about building this gas pipeline to Turkey, or to Turkey through Cyprus, and that would have been a much shorter route to the European markets than building it through Greece. But given that these Israel-Turkish relations have been very iffy over the years, I think it's no surprise they turned to Greece.
So could you say in any way that Israel is somehow choosing Greece over Turkey?
I'd exactly say that. I think when you look at tourism, when you look at security cooperation, Israel's kind of made a choice over the past few years to go with Greece instead of Turkey. And this is because since the Aviv Mamar incident in 2009, Israel-Turkish relations have been fraught. There's a lot of words we could use here.
Well, we did see a reconciliation deal, but that doesn't mean that things have necessarily changed on the ground in terms of how the two countries feel about each other.
Well, we've seen this reconciliation deal where Israel essentially apologized for something that I'm sure a lot of people here didn't think they should have apologized for. And then, that doesn't mean the trust has been restored. That doesn't mean that the Turkish President Erdogan has changed his posture toward Israel. We could say he supports Hamas, and he certainly vocally bashes Israel in international forums. And I think when they're building this billion-dollar infrastructure to transport natural gas, the question is, can we count on our partner? And with Turkey, that's a big question. With Greece,
well, let's check out your report.
Yeah.
For years, Israel's been looking for a way to export its vast natural gas reserves to Europe, and it's looking like it'll be through the Aegean Sea. Following an April agreement to construct a 1,400-mile pipeline from Israel to Greece via Cyprus, the leaders of the three countries have agreed to accelerate the project. At a trilateral meeting in Thessaloniki, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Greek Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras both had high hopes.
Συμφωνήσαμε λοιπόν να επιταχύνουμε τις κοινές ενέργειές μας σε σχέση με τη συμφωνία μας για την κατασκευή ενός μεγάλου έργου, ενός έργου που θα δημιουργήσει μια νέα προοπτική συνεργασίας, οικονομικής συνεργασίας και συνανάπτυξης στην νότιο-ανατολική Μεσόγειο του αγωγού EastMed. Του αγωγού που θα ενώνει το Ισραήλ και την Κύπρο με την Ελλάδα και από εκεί με την υπόλοιπη Ευρώπη.
The idea of the EastMed pipeline, which would be a revolution. We've had preliminary studies of it. It seems promising, and we're going to look further into it, but it would connect our three countries and Italy. It's something we're very excited about.
Right now, Russia provides around 25% of Europe's natural gas, which many see as politically problematic. Europe is looking for other sources of the fuel, and this Israeli-Greek project just might be what they're looking for. Originally, Israel had planned to build a pipeline through Turkey, but unstable relations with the Eurasian nation put that on hold. This isn't the first time that a Turkish pipeline deal has fallen through. When Turkey shot down a Russian warplane in 2015, Russia canceled plans to build the joint Turk Stream pipeline.
Now, this is an interesting story. A senior Palestinian official has donated tens of thousands of shekels to an Israeli hospital in Haifa, and it's all because of the world-class treatment he received there. The official, who wishes to remain anonymous, stayed at the Rambam Medical Center in Haifa after being diagnosed with a cancerous tumor. He says that at the hospital he saw a place where Palestinian, Israeli, Syrian, and other children were all treated for serious illnesses, showing that both Israeli and Palestinian societies suffer from the damage of violence. Around 1,200 Palestinians a year receive treatment at the hospital. Now, the official's donation will go to the construction of a recovery room for children at the hospital who undergo radiation treatment. He made his donation in a ceremony at the new Fishman Oncology Center, where he personally handed over the funds. He's expressing his hope that the Palestinians will improve the state of health systems and treatment capacities in the Palestinian Authority and Gaza. All right, now every 4 years, over 9,000 athletes compete on behalf of 78 countries in what is known as the biggest Jewish sporting event worldwide. Joining me today in the studio to discuss this year's upcoming Maccabiah Games is Amir Peled, the chairman of this year's competition, and Miron Scheuerman, the IT manager of the Games. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you.
Now, this is a really exciting event for the Jewish diaspora and also Israelis as well. How long have the Maccabiah Games been going on, and what's the history behind them?
Yeah, the first Maccabiah was 1932. That means that we are 85 years old now. And we are 20th Maccabiah. The only time that the Maccabiah was stopped was during the Holocaust. So from then, except those 2-3 Maccabiahs that couldn't come up, until today, every 4 years, the Maccabiah is taking place in Israel.
Now, why was this event created? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's a kind of a Jewish Olympics, namely that it started from Europe, it started in Turkey, it started while Max Nordo was the one to say, hey guys, we are not only books, we are also muscles, and we have to be there as well. We have to prepare ourselves in sports, and he was the one to establish the idea, and Yekutieli was the one to establish the Maccabiah system. And the Maccabiah, as I say, Jewish Olympics.
Now, it's interesting because I think that, I mean, there are Israelis and there are Jews who are professional athletes, but, you know, there certainly needs to be an environment for those of us here who may not necessarily be in the NBA or the European Championships to have a place to play sports. So I know we're all really excited about this event. Now, who is competing and what countries are going to be joining in?
Well, we have this year around 80 countries. And we are going to be around 10,000 athletes and other participants in the Games from large countries like the US, Australia, and Canada, and small countries like Curacao and Hong Kong and other small countries.
Who knew there was even a Jewish population in Curacao, right?
Yeah, you find out that there is a Jewish population all over. If we are talking about 80 countries, those are 80 countries that Jews can come from.
Right.
Okay, they cannot come from Iran, but they come from those small communities. We call them something like lost communities because they are very small, and we are making all the efforts to bring them over to let them have this Jewish experience.
Well, what's so exciting about it too is beyond just the sports, it's the ability to be able to meet so many people from communities around the world and to kind of join in this fun kind of game environment. So what events should we be watching out for?
First of all, let's start with the opening ceremony. The opening ceremony is going to be 6th of July in Jerusalem. We are 50 years of Jerusalem United, and we are doing it in Jerusalem, and it's going to be a great event. It's going to be very emotional. You're going to see about 20,000 Jews, part of the 30,000 that are going to be in Teddy Stadium, singing a tikva in about 80 different languages or 80 different accents. That's something amazing. And we are talking about an event that will create the opening of 14 days of about 5,000 sports competitions. And if we are talking about highlights, let's say in the second week of the games, 4 Olympic gold medalists are going to be in the Wingate swimming pool competing each other. So we're going to have very high level of sports competition.
And there are going to be some new sports and countries as well, correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes, we are going to have lacrosse, which is a new sport for us, and the new countries that I mentioned before. And we count every Jew around the world who wants to compete in Israel.
And also women's field hockey.
And women's field hockey.
Can't forget that.
We are taking care of both of the athletes' athletic time and also the recreational time.
So they're going to get to travel around Israel a little bit as well, too,
Absolutely.
right?
We are talking about numbers that, you know, if we're talking about tourism or if we're talking about economy and sport, we are talking about 150,000 bed nights for athletes only. And we are talking about the same number, more or less, for those who accompany them. We are talking about 1,500 bus transportation every day. We are talking about 650,000
crazy.
meals.
I mean, and especially for Jerusalem, a city which is trying to grow economically, you know, this is a really big deal for so many business owners as well.
Absolutely.
Now, I understand because there are so many people that are going to be coming, there's a lot of new technology that's being used to kind of enhance the experience and make sure that everybody can film from their iPhones, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so we have 3 major technology systems. The first one is called Maccabiah Star. Made by Taldor, which is our main operational system. We have mobile and web systems for every single athlete to be able to approach all the information about our games and location of the games. And we have a very interesting system which is for our staff, so we know exactly where each of our staff is, so we can communicate with them for every need. God forbid we don't need them, but if something happens.
Right, of course. I mean, because there have to be, you know, there are security concerns with so many people being in this one place, so it's very important. Well, unfortunately, we ran out of time, but thank you guys so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
And I can't wait to check out the Maccabiah games myself.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, a farm in northern Israel is focused on growing medicinal plants, and some of its crops go back to biblical times. Roni and Peretz Gan have been running the soup herbs farm since 1986 and exporting some of their medicinal plants to the world market. Their hyssop plant, well known in Israel for its role in the za'atar spice blend, is also a folk cure as a cough suppressant. Other native plants like the marigold, sage, and chamomile have antibacterial parasite fighting and even antioxidant properties. But they're not only growing native Israeli crops. They're also growing a Himalayan plant called the orinja, a drought-resistant bush whose seed pods and leaves may be a famine-resistant food source. It looks like the soup herbs farm might be a really cool place to visit if you come to Israel, especially if you have any existing medical conditions. All right, now I'm really excited to share this story. A Tel Aviv comic artist's lovable comics about his domestic life with his wife have gone viral, getting around 10 million views and 350,000 Facebook shares. Yehuda Adi Dvir's comics about him and his wife Maya make light of her questionable internal temperature regulation, her cockroach assassination techniques, and her ability to create countless dirty dishes with just one bowl of cereal. The quirky comics are making quite a buzz on social media, so could a sitcom be in order? Many classic TV shows have been built around the character dynamic of a goofy wife and a straight man husband, from I Love Lucy to Dharma and Greg. The world just might be ready for Yehuda versus Maya.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
Now for our Hebrew word of the day. Whether it's for work, a hobby, or just to keep yourself on track throughout the day, it's often a good idea to set a purpose or an end goal for ourselves. That's why today's word is matara, meaning goal or purpose. If you are explaining the game of tag, for example, you might say that the matara is to avoid the person who's it. Maybe you have the long-term matara to be an astronaut one day, or maybe you're just a super goal-oriented person and people describe you as dabek b'matara or glued to your purpose. Whatever the case, matarot or goals are a really great way to keep your life heading towards where you want it. Just remember that when you're forming your matara, aim high. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight, you can expect clear skies with a low of 70 or 21 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, you can expect a significant drop in temperatures with a high of 86 or 30 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.52 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.